Hey, GM, got an awesome show. Today, we got Nekfis on. He's going to talk about his building career. He's got a prop up now, Prop 283, but we're going to kind of go through Nekfis's career. He's been through a lot, and we want to see what we can learn from Nekfis. So we're going to get started right after this quick intro. Hey, Nekfis, GM.
GM. I'm excited to be here, and it'll actually be pretty interesting to see like the entire building route and map of everything I've done. I've actually have never done it myself, so let's get to it.
Let's go. And of course, as always, joined by Index Card Index GM.
GM. Excited to chat and go through everything here. I had the pleasure of meeting Nekfist like a week or so ago in real life, and it was really fun. Super passionate about nouns and all his ideas. So this should be a good one.
Awesome. Nekfis, got to start with the PFP. This looks like an iguana wearing
Yep,
a suit with a black tie.
there you go. You got it. Yes, this is one of the Amigos heads that were made for the Nouns Amigos community. We have our own prop house, and I basically told Meshup that I needed an iguana because I love them, and they're pretty much very representative from the Dominican Republic. And I have a house close by to one of the iguana reservoirs. So I interact a lot with them. And I don't know, I just have a very close attachment to it.
I absolutely love that. Um, and you're wearing the suit. Do you have an attachment to the suit, or is that just kind of the accessory you got? Or
Not really. I just thought an iguana and a suit looks cool. I wanted a lab coat, but yeah, I couldn't get that.
a lab coat, like a white thing, like a doctor's coat?
Yeah, exactly. I'm almost a doctor. About in a year, I'll officially be a doctor.
Oh, hey, that would make a good graduation gift for you, wouldn't
Definitely.
it? Awesome. All right, so you are at Nekfis. Gosh, you've been around definitely longer than me. I feel like I've kind of come across your work in Little Nouns, and I've seen a lot of the videos that have come from your stuff, but this is our first time talking. It's awesome to have you on the show. Main thing, we're going to build up towards Prop 283, your current prop, which starts the 7th, right? So that starts in 2 days, Sunday morning for me.
Yep.
Awesome. And so I asked you, we don't have a whole lot planned, but I said, hey, what was your first prop? How did you first get started? And you sent me this right here. This is a prop house. Let's set the stage here. What is this? Which round is this, and what time is this? This looks like round two for Little Nouns.
Yep, round two for Lil Nouns. So I actually knew about Nouns since it started, but of course the price point and it just basically drew me away. I knew I wasn't able to buy one for a long time. So then I've seen a lot of the things that were going around with Nouns, but that price point thing was really a big thing for me. I think I was in that mentality of I had to own the NFT to really be invested into it. And so when Lil Nouns came around, it was the perfect opportunity for me to, of course, join this fork and start doing things. And I could buy a Lil Noun and actually start like building and trying to collaborate with other people and get to know other people. And I exactly did just that. I spent, I believe, like almost a month just thinking what can I do to provide value. I was really big on trying to provide some type of value into the ecosystem. I didn't want to do things just to do them. I believe that if you can take things you want to do or you like doing and develop that through some type of endeavor and also provide value to the thing you're working towards or for, it's a sweet spot for what you want to get in order to not only progress in your craft, but also keep constantly providing value to all the things you interact with.
So that's, I think, sort of a very nounish question to ask yourself. What can I do to provide value? Is this kind of way of thinking something you learned from nouns, or did you sort of have that from previous experiences in your life? In other words, what kind of caused you to spend so much time a month on kind of this frame of a question?
I've always been raised with this win-win mentality, especially in business, from my family, and I think now just establish that up front, like this is the way to do nounish things, and it goes back to that nouns is a positive sum game, and it's basically an infinite game. So this is actually the right mentality to have. If you think that nouns is a negative sum game, then your outlook within nouns is actually pretty narrow and not that great for the nounish mission or the flywheel itself.
Yeah. Totally agree. You're hitting key points for us. Um, but let me just sort of recap and make sure I understand this. So you spent all this time. What can I do to provide value? You said kind of it's sort of what you've always had it in business and from your family. Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, basically my family is very business oriented, and they've always like taught me this indirectly and directly, actually.
Awesome. Okay, so that's what I'm interested in is like, what can you maybe give an example or kind of an early experience or something that really kind of taught you this lesson? Or do you think it's sort of just an accumulation of a bunch of things? Is there anything that sticks out, I guess?
There's definitely something that sticks out, and it's actually it was a problem within my family where there was a situation. One of the family members basically backstabbed another one, business wise, and I think it consolidated this idea that there was never a need to do so, since you could always work together for the same thing you both want.
Huh.
So it kind of just threw that out there, and through speaking with different people, different family members, I think I understood that there's always a way for everyone to win, and there's always a way for everyone to get value. And I think in my core, I actually do believe this, and I try to execute things with this mentality because, like, when I'm trying to do something, anything pretty much, I always think about who's winning here and how is every person winning. How can I make everyone win? Either making volunteers feel good through doing activities, either the persons we're actually helping out, the communities that are being affected, and of course myself, which the biggest value that I get, in my opinion, is just that satisfaction of actually being able to impact a lot of people. And I think that's a gift that I'll never be able to thank enough to nouns.
Hmm. Yeah, that's that's a really radical thing here. Let me just kind of go over this. You're saying there's always a way for everyone to win and get value. I mean, I'd say that's not many people think that way.
I just think that the world itself, it's pretty positive sum game if you look at it that way. And then after that, it's just who I do business with or who I collaborate with or even my colleagues in medicine. I just need that long term, let's provide value to each other thing. If not, it just doesn't work. And why it
Yeah.
doesn't work, I believe there's a lot of hurdles you have to get around when you're dealing with people that are really in that negative sum mentality. That every time you win or anyone wins, they're losing something. And the hurdles around that mentality, I think they're just too big and too complicated to even bother wasting time and try to create relationships overall with those type of people.
Okay. Okay, so I think this is a really fun frame to look at your sort of building career. This kind of outlook you have of the world is positive sum, there's a way for everyone to win. I mean, the sub premise here that you're saying is basically I want everyone to win with my props, right?
Yeah.
So awesome. So let's see. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start here, right, with this round two little nouns. Talk to me about, how could you make everyone win here with this?
I think this was the first time where I realized that, hey, there's a lot of Spanish speakers that don't know English, and nouns would be a great thing for them. Why? Since most Spanish speakers would live in developing countries, the amount of prop house rounds is actually a huge amount for their craft specifically. And
Yes.
that's a beautiful thing. So I said, hey, what if I create a mirror article to just explain nouns and little nouns to Spanish speakers? Not even for them to understand and just go on their own and try to do things. Yes, they could, but even just reach out to me. If they reach out, I'm already in compromise to just help them try and do something. And it worked, which was the greatest part. Through this article, I found out about a total, I think, of like 22 people from the Web3 community that reached out. They wanted to know more. And that actually was like kind of the inception of what Nouns Amigos today is.
So you basically built a funnel for Spanish speakers to kind of proliferate nouns to them, and then kind of you reached 22 people, and then that turned into Nouns DAO Amigos.
Yep.
So this sort of like this prop here basically kicked off a sub DAO.
Pretty much, it helped, I think, bring together the people that actually created the sub DAO. So through this mirror article and Twitter Spaces I did after that, I met Mono and Ale, who are one of the other founders of Nouns Amigos, together with Mimics, Meshup, myself, Mono and Ale. We are the founders, and it basically came together thanks to this. It's like till now, to today, it's, I think, one of the best relationships I have with the DAO.
That's pretty cool. Did you win this prop
Yes,
round?
I did win that.
What can you take me back to what that was like when you put this up? Did you own a little noun at that point?
Yes, I did own, I think, like 2 little nouns. And what it was like, it was actually it wasn't that bad for me. I think I've never had that much of a problem with sharing things around. and exposing myself like, hey, I'm out, this is what I think, this is what I want to do. And I really don't take judgment or critics like with that much importance. I understand their concepts and their ideas and what they want to say, and just implement them in any contributive way to what I'm doing and what can I do better. So, but yeah, just writing out the prop, trying to like communicate what I wanted to do, I think was the most important aspect. And then after that, I just uploaded it. It was very exciting. I'm gonna say when it was in the voting period. So like looking at the votes, like getting votes, like telling people, hey, I made this prop. Could you please vote for me? That was a very fun period in my opinion, and I met like a lot of people during that specifically.
You got a bunch of votes here. You got first place.
No, that's another guy actually. He and I had the same idea. He did it in English and I did it in Spanish. Right there at the bottom.
Oh, okay. So this is you here.
No. That's another person. It's a website. There you go. Oh yeah,
So
I had actually two. Wow.
10 votes from Will Price,
Yeah.
SQ, a bunch of different voters. What was that like when you found out that you won this round?
It was actually pretty like satisfactory from the point of view of like, hey, you did it, like good job. Now let's get onto building and let's get onto writing that article. It was just basically like, hey, you had a decent idea. Now let's execute it and keep going.
Awesome. If we could go back to this point in time when you won this, did you think that you would be, in May of 2023 putting on Chain a prop on Nouns about clothing? I mean, could you have seen how your career developed back here?
I don't think I've seen like I would see myself putting a prop at all into Nouns on Chain. I think that was a very daunting task for like that exact period. That was like a year ago or so, more than a year ago, I think. But if you would have told me that someday I would be interested in making something with fashion, I would tell you yes, of course. Like, I think I've always been very passionate about that and always had like that chip, I guess, into that the creative aspect of design and like how can I create things pretty much. So yes, it does make sense like to me like creating something with fashion, but it doesn't make sense like if you would have told me like a year ago, no, I wouldn't even believed you. Like I could get a prop on Chain.
Okay. All right. I see Index Card has Attitude of the Pirate Ship.
That's sick.
This is our Little Nouns owns Noun 677, which is a pirate ship. So he and I are riding this one, and yeah, welcome aboard. Let's go to let's see. I would say let's go to your first defeat or kind of setback after this Pequeños Nouns ECC 0.
I believe my first setback was actually a discourse grant to expand this exact idea. Like I wanted to be a kind of a not residency pretty much, but just for 3 months, I think it was, to focus on gathering like all these all the people go down. No, it's in Lil Nouns, I believe. So Lil Nouns discourse. Some people were a bit upset. I remember it was a pretty controversial thing, but it was outreach and representation. Yeah, there you go. August 2022. So I basically wanted to do the job of like reaching out to all Spanish speakers and gathering that into the community. Basically, I wanted to make Nouns Amigos. I just didn't have the Nouns Amigos like name on top of my head, and I wanted to collaborate with. No, actually, Nouns Amigos was already implemented. Yes, I wanted to work with Nouns Amigos, which was Alice and Mono's name, to start expanding this Spanish speaker like community sub DAO pretty much, or sub community. It isn't a DAO. And I went through Lil Nouns, which is the only funding I actually knew people in and thought I could get funding for. And it didn't pass because of they didn't want to put a precedent for like funding someone for their language and outreach in the language, which I understood completely. I basically was just looking for funding to just focus on this for those months, and yeah, if I could look back, I think this was my first defeat and showed me like, hey, oh look, whoa. That's beautiful, isn't it?
I love that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that actually just made me like stop for a second. Like, hey, great. But yeah, I just wanted to like do more of the things I was doing, and I just think this small grant defeat was it showed me like what defeat tastes like and how do you iterate and keep going further after that.
All right,
And yeah,
that's the juicy stuff that we got to dig into.
let's go.
So, okay, so let me get the context a little bit better here because this is all before I was in Little Nouns. This is August. Okay, so this is about a month before I kind of joined. But all right, so you posted a discourse to ask little small funding to basically fund you to sort of build out Nouns DAO Amigos. You asked for a total of 3.3 ETH total. Is that
Yep.
right? Okay, so that's not a huge amount. I mean, that's, relative to the treasury back then. I mean, that's not a big amount, right?
Yeah, but I thought it was fair for like the amount of work I wanted to do, and I also wanted to like give um some funds in the Twitter spaces, like to incentivize people to create memes and stuff.
Yeah, and then you got defeated, or you didn't get anywhere with this. You didn't
Oh
get this.
no, basically the committee decided like to not to fund it.
Yeah. Okay, so then what happens next? You find out the committee says, "Hey, we're going to not fund you." Tell me, let's get into Nexus here. What's on your mind? What are you thinking? What do you do next?
I basically said that's fine. What can I do next to implement this? And even if funding isn't there, like I still want to do this, how can I do this? So funding was just a great way for me to dedicate a lot of time, like justifiably in my mind. I believe a lot of people have that problem that they want actually to do things and they would do things for free, but it just isn't justified to themselves, I think, on the amount of time they're putting into this and what they're getting out of it. So I believe I wasn't in the time. I was actually in a pretty stressful time in med school. And I just wanted to really justify not studying that much and like doing this, sitting down, like doing this. But it didn't pass. So I said, hey, let me step back. And I actually kept doing the Twitter, like weekly Twitter spaces. And then few of those later, I started to do them with Nouns Amigos. And then I came together with Nouns Amigos and pretty much just had a lot of help. So I was able to do the thing I do best, which is pretty much just strategize how we do things and ideate what ideas should we implement to make things better. And Mono and Ale, they're both designers, world class, they're great. and they had the skills that I didn't have. Like I have no design skills. I have no like basically practical skill. I do have a lot of ideas and a lot of like creative ideation, but I do need people to help me out, like to implement those. So that was like the perfect place to be. And after that, we just started developing Nouns Amigos on our own. And we didn't get funding actually until a lot of months later, I think, like 3 months later. But it was easier work since it was distributed by 5 founders. So, yeah.
And did that funding come from Nouns Maine?
No, it came from Prop House.
Prop House. Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right, so if we recap here, basically, you post on Discourse, you try and build up support in Little Nouns to basically fund this kind of nebulous community stuff, but you have clear things like Twitter Spaces, and they say no. And your first reaction is basically, all right, that's fine, but how can I still do this? And then you just keep building until you get funding 3 months later.
Yep.
Right? Is that right? Okay. All right. So then let's jump over to your first Nouns on chain. So that is going to be 137. Is that right?
Yep. 137.
Okay. So Mucho Love 4-month extension. 154 yes. 0 against. Wow. This is one of those hell yes props, huh?
Yeah, I think this is basically my attempt to create my own thing within Nouns. I think it all started with that Nounifying Children's Hearts prop house. And I realized that the initial thing I told you, like I could help people. I could have that ability to impact others with Nouns, and it could fit into the flywheel. And when that clicked, it was just very beautiful, in my opinion. And I realized that I can create a community out of this. And I can do this with my friends, with colleagues, family members, anyone who wants to join. We can make this a thing, actually. And this was a first prop to start creating that community. And I think it worked beautifully. We asked for, I think, 22 ETH just to fund the activations. And we gave 1 year worth of supplies to an orphanage. We also helped a dog shelter. We also, forgetting the activities now. So many we've done. We also went to a hospital, of course. And then we went to a community in Cotuí, which is pretty much a old, kind of like rural area of the Dominican Republic. And yeah, that was like the start of that, the beginning of that.
Okay. So at this point, I think I saw this prop. And what I'd love to talk about with you is some of the videos that you've made from these. Do you have, I should have prepared this earlier, but do you have a link to a video of some of the work you've done recently that kind of tells a story about Mucho Love and about a particular activation? I'd love to just kind of watch a video.
Sure. Let me go into Mucho Love and I'll send you the link right over.
And yeah, sweet. I've seen you post that. I don't know if you're video editing or if you have someone else doing it, but I just get the sense that you are pretty involved in the production of the video. I don't know if that's true or not, but
yep. I've actually started learning video editing and basically pre-production, post-production of videos, because I realized that I think I have this pretty much live experience because of YouTube. I think I understand content a lot and storytelling and how things should be sequenced and where to put each piece of content. And that was something my editing team that I hired didn't actually get. So I started I saw myself like in this obligation. I need to like learn how to video edit so I can understand the limitations they have. And actually, that first team was fired. Now we have another team that we're building up. And I think I tweeted something else the other day, I think yesterday, that I realized that building talent is way more important than buying talent. Like, you really shouldn't buy talent because that brings a lot of baggage, in my opinion. Why? I believe people who are already talented and get paid very well for their talents, they think they know it all. I'm not saying most of them, just the one I've experienced. And it was very hard to actually get them to understand what I wanted to create without their like traditional media minds going into, hey, this is not supposed to be this way. You should script this. You should do this way. You should make people cry through these emotions clips, whatever. And I got it, but it didn't fit into what I wanted to do. And here's the video. I sent it. Like, here's one of the videos. Yeah.
Okay, so let's pop this up here.
Donating to an orphanage here in the Dominican Republic. We're donating.
Can you guys hear that audio?
Yep.
Okay, sweet.
Notebooks, crayons, colored pencils, all types of supplies for its school, and soccer kits for its recently created soccer team.
Yeah, it's really, really immersive. You really feel like you're there, and high energy. It's very kind of Mr. Beast-ish almost.
That was a point. I think we're still developing that.
No, esto es algo muy interesante, extremadamente emocional para ellos. Realmente es algo que no están acostumbrados a ver. O sea, lo ven si acaso una vez al año.
Oops.
Pica.
I think I'm having technical issues there, but awesome video. I love how you've had to kind of learn the storytelling yourself, and I totally could go into it with you about narrative and YouTube and content and how that affects your approach. But let's go, if we can, to your next on-chain prop. After what was that, 137?
Yep, it was 191, I think. 191, I think. Yes.
191. Okay, defeated. Here we go. Yes. So here's all right. Let's get into this then. What happened here?
Oh, this was a beautiful experience. Like, truly beautiful. I think this was the first time I realized that faster and more and bigger isn't necessarily better. I had this perspective of this proposal that I just wanted. I was feeling so many great things around doing Mucho Love that I wanted others who wanted to do the same to experience it with me. So I wanted to create like a sub community just from Mucho Love, which was going to be called Nouns Love. But then quickly realized that after some feedback and back and forth with other nouners and other people like around the entire idea, it was going to become very fragmented and very difficult to like control. Basically, control isn't the word, just to really like get all of those efforts narrowed down and focused and actually high impact. Because we were trying to do the same thing in 6 other countries, I believe, 5 other countries, with 5 other nounish leads, community leads, which were Mono in Mexico, you had Davin, BK in Germany, and Blake in Spain. So 4 countries. And yeah, after that failed, I think I realized like, hey, this is actually good. Because after speaking with all the nowners, I realized myself that this was actually a harder approach for me and will limit my capabilities of iterating and experimenting a lot.
Yeah. So when you went on chain, did you expect this to pass and it was surprising that you didn't? Or did you kind of know it might be tough? Or
Yeah, I knew it
don't,
might be tough. Yeah, 100%. I knew it.
because you're asking for a lot more budget, it's a much bigger scope, a lot more people,
Yep.
a lot bigger than just a transfer 24 ETH to Nekvis.
Yep.
So you called this a beautiful experience here when you lost. Um, what did you take from it? How did you get from there to your next prop?
It was actually pretty quick. Like I knew already what I wanted to do in DR. I just had to remove all of the international things and pretty much fix all the feedback I got. It's 207, I think, or 9. Sorry.
209. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just had to fix that side of the feedback and removing international things. And yeah, this is our last proposal. I think this proposal, like looking back on it, like today, it was a great proposal. And if I had to change one thing, it would definitely been the media side of it. Today, we've realized that actually growing a platform like Mucholov organically is pretty hard and it takes time. And for example, for Nextprop, we already have like from the media side, we're saving up like a good chunk of money that was supposed to be used on this proposal exactly to not ask for the next prop. Because right now, like we're in this process of what does constant content from Mucha Love looks like, and what does high value content that I would actually watch and want to watch for the people who interact with Mucha Love also looks like. So I think Panda, you could relate to this a bit. We're in that weird spot on yes, we're doing great things, we're doing amazing things, but what's that constant content? What's that one thing that we can do over and over again? And it can become that signature thing. And we're getting to that already. We're going to use our volunteers. We have over 100 of them right now. And in a very unique and beautiful way, in my opinion. So we're thinking in a lot of ways on how to go with like content that isn't directly related with the activations, but is directly related with what noun stands for and the nounish message, in my opinion. So let's say we're planning on doing content where I ask a question. Let's say if you could give someone one thing, what would it be? And then a sequence of, let's say, 20 volunteers answering that question. So let's say a house or love or peacefulness or conscientiousness, like that kind of content. I think it's where we're moving towards. But to go back a bit into this prop itself, the activities done were changed a bit, which also taught me another thing. I think like Mucholov's best approach would be a fund that we can use without like establishing the exact activities, which may be a bit weird side for nouns, but I think we've gathered enough trust for them to trust us with that funding amount for the activities. Because what happens is we establish the activities in this prop, but we actually get other opportunities. So people reach out, other companies, or maybe even like we've been reached out by Save the Children. We've been reached out by Jabéame, which is one of the biggest charities in the Dominican Republic. And it truly feels bad to get out of sorry. It really does feel bad to get out of that pre-established activity and do something else, because it feels like I'm trying to do something different to what I said in the prop, but it's truly in the same like sentiment and idea. So I don't know. I've learned a lot, and it's been great. Like from those activities, we've done the free haircuts, we've done the going to the nursing home, and the Nounish home run. We're still missing one activity that we're doing in about a week or so. But yeah, this is basically that prop, and yeah, we're almost done with it, sadly. We have to put up another one.
Yeah, and I'm struck by kind of, I mean, you have a pretty darn detailed budget here. You have specific things. And what I hear you saying basically is when you put this prop up, when was this? Let's say this was
February, I think.
in January
Yeah.
15th. But you're saying basically now you have a better idea of how to better spend the money for better impact, but you feel kind of locked into this prop.
Yeah, but I think it's part of the growing pains and iteration experimentation of what we're doing. Like, I realized, I think Mucho Love works better as a collaborative platform than a platform that's trying to do everything themselves. Let me explain myself. There's a lot of charities in the DR who work and do beautiful jobs, like Techo, who build houses, Jompeame, which take care of critical care, Dominicans, Save the Children with Children's. And what if Mucho Love positions itself with its funding to collaborate with these entities to do the things that are already high impact, and we already have the volunteers? So the hardest aspect of doing charity for big charities is actually getting volunteers, and we already have that. So it's a big leverage on our side to like come to these organizations, or this organization come to us and say, hey, let's collaborate, let's do something together, give us volunteers and some funding, and we'll also put up funding and our professionals to do X thing.
That makes sense. It makes perfect sense to me. And so it sounds like your next prop up for Mutual Love, you're going to kind of try and pivot towards that as a model.
Yeah, correct. And I think it works way better as a model. And from the media side, as I told you, like pretty much the leverage our volunteers to create organic content that actually provides value to other people. I think that's pretty key, and pretty key to my mission to make Mucho Love like a platform for good things. It doesn't necessarily have to rely always on videos from activities. And even some activities, like, they're really hard to put up in that upbeat, happy sentiment, because they are actually pretty sad and pretty like tough to watch. So I really want to get that content thing around. I've been speaking with Nounish back and forth, some ideas that I've had with my team. And yeah, I think that's the only part of that proposal that we quote unquote failed. But thankfully we stopped funding after 2 months, the previous team that we fired. And now we hired like new people that we're building up. So yeah, just a bump on the road, but I think it has given me the time to like truly think through what Mucho Love should become and what it should be. And I think we're finally in a spot where it actually makes a lot of sense how we're doing it. Because at the end of the day, we can work with other charities and diminish our costs for those activities. And we can focus more on what activities we want to do, which are pretty interesting one, which is basically the idea of Nounish makeovers. You saw the barbershop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually a business. And legally, as a charity, you can't really donate to businesses. Thankfully, Mucho Love isn't a charity. It's a group of people who have funding for Nouns. But we realized that, hey, sometimes in communities, yes, you can give clothing, food, essentials away for them. And that may last them for 3 months, 4 months, depending on the size of the community. But it was pretty interesting to see from their part. They basically told us, hey, instead of donating to us, let's help this family out. They've been running this barbershop for 70 years now. They don't want to raise prices because they feel like they're charging more to their family, which is their community. And it's pretty in a bad state. Like, it does need remodeling. And yeah, we got in contact with them and we said, hey, we'll help you out. We'll give you funding for you to remodel the barbershop, and let's do an activity with the community around it. And we realized the importance of that public good itself. Like, that felt like if we were creating a park. If I could like had to not create an analogy for it, it's like creating a park or a basketball court for a community. It felt like that because it's a place that people go very often, interact with extremely often. And seeing it in such a bad state, I think it reflected maybe some of their emotions towards the community, or even sadness because they appreciate that family so much. And seeing their faces after it was like completely painted and fixed, it was truly priceless. And I think that's also one of the next implementations which I will have. It's basically Nownish makeovers and collaborating with other charitable entities.
So I was actually going to ask you about that barbershop story, because when we had lunch, it was kind of, to me, like the most impactful and clear way to explain your mission moving forward. Just kind of wondering if you had any other, well, I don't want to like pre-spoil any prop ideas, but what would be like another example or something you're looking to do next that Nouns should fund through your next prop?
Yeah, I believe that we've already got some pretty good ideas, but it goes around that Nownish makeover idea. So let's say we find a basketball court that is in horrible, like in a horrible state, pretty much unusable, and we'll get together with the heads of those community members and speak to them. How can we do something about this? Why hasn't the government done anything about it? And I know that to get things fixed in the Dominican government, it's a long process, like really long process. It takes years. It can take years. And in some cases, decades, which is crazy. But I believe like targeting those type of activities and those type of like impacts is way better than trying to do things that we're maybe not really 100% optimized for. So let's say remodeling a basketball court, or maybe having a park that it's in a bad state and also helping with that. Or let's say there's a grandma that has been selling empanadas for 70 years, like help her out with her business and create the first Nownish empanaderia in the world. Like, there's pretty much endless limitations, and I think it's a way better format for the sole reason that type of impact is pretty much timeless. Like, it's always going to be there, and we can always go back. And there's going to be the Noggles and Nouns represented within that activity. And it also makes for great content, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I really like the idea of Nouns and Nouns funded endeavors and missions kind of outpacing any form of existing government or like bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It kind of like really speaks to the power of like Nouns, the blockchain, and like crypto, that it can just deploy this capital to passionate individuals, and they can move faster than anything that existed before it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the entire focus. I believe I think it just fits Nouns better, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially with like the long timeline of Nouns, something that can stick around and have lasting impact. It really ties back into like this possibility that Nouns will go on forever as long as someone's there to keep it going.
Yeah, I think it always came from, I think we've reached this spot specifically because of one of Seneca's comments in my prop, which was basically good things. But if I could say something, I wish that the next proposal pushes more the crypto to charity idea. Like, what can crypto charity do that normal charities can't? And I think this next format that we're implementing, the next proposal, it's a beautiful example of what Mucho Love can do that no other entity in the Dominican Republic can actually do.
We had Will Papper on our show like a week ago, and his big thing is public goods, and through Nouns, it's more specifically what is Nouns in a unique position to fund that like other organizations or funding avenues will not. And so I've been thinking about that a lot personally. Like now, every prop that comes up, I'm thinking, how is Nouns uniquely positioned to fund this versus other things?
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
Let's get real quick to 283. This is your current prop on chain, Nekvis, clothing every day forever. There's quite a lot here. Could you give me the sort of the one paragraph or, the 3 or 4 sentence summary?
Of course. Basically, we want to create Wares.wtf, which is a clothing brand from scratch that leverages CC0 assets from Web3 or even broader than that to create clothing that powers the community members that form part of that Web3 community. It basically comes from my desire to have Nounish clothing that I would wear. And I really wanted to create something unique and not just print it out myself and just have it myself. I reached out to LeBlanc Studios, which are one of the best fashion houses here in the Dominican Republic. And they decided hey, if we can make this work, yes, 100% we can create this. They were basically in right away after I told them, hey, we can get funding for the first batch of production and we can get this smoothly into market thanks to Nouns. Let's do this for Nouns, with Nouns, and let's create something that actually would be kind of a public good, quote unquote, in the sense that after creating Nounish collections, our focus is going into let's say cryptodes or CZ0, checks, OP Pen, Rect, pretty much just powering different Web3 communities through clothing that I know they would wear. And that's pretty much the entire idea.
There's been a lot of clothing props. I haven't followed that whole clothing meta, but there's a lot here. I don't know, Index, what are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously clothing is a little bit of a tricky one based on previous proposal history. But I do know Nekvis' approach to this prop is kind of different than any of the other clothing props in the past. Let's take the Mad Happy one. That was pretty much pulling an existing company completely and relying on them, whereas you kind of are working with a company, but it's still through a Nounish person, i.e. you, and not completely delegating all responsibility to the other company. So that's kind of always nice to have a Nounish liaison and kind of director behind the idea. And then there was, of course, Nouns brand, which was just a rather large lump sum up front. So you're kind of in between, and I think it's going to be challenging for you based on the other prop history. And then a recent thought I had was maybe you're in this middle ground, and that middle ground might be tough for either side to pull for you. But I'm not too sure. We'll see,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in my opinion, it's a great prop itself. It's a really great prop. But I do believe most people have this thing with fashion, it hasn't worked out as well before. But I also think it hasn't been done in the right approach. If I had to tell you what a good approach is maybe Jack Butcher's approach. But he's also platformed already, and he has a man from his side, right? So how can we make something like that, but in a different way where you are actually designing good quality clothing? So that's the entire point. How can we create good products and make those products available for anyone to buy? Yes, if the Nouns community only ends up buying, let's say, 100 of the entire product, which I think it'll be more, because once people see the clothing on models, once they see the lookbook, once they see the videos, I believe it will trigger a response that, hey, I want this, and it'll drive a lot more demand. But also from LeBlanc's customer base, we've already shared some of the designs, and even if they're not done, which they aren't, they love the idea of these new, never seen before designs which is pretty interesting to me. Like, hey, we have demands even from people who don't understand anything about nouns, which is crazy. But it does speak to the beauty of nouns itself, the art, the pixels. And I believe it's a very unique opportunity for a reasonable cost to begin a brand that's going to power clothing through CC0 assets.
Could you take us through, Nekfest, sort of your, so this thing goes live Sunday, kind of your campaign strategy, how you expect to pass? Like, what are you doing right now? Are you just kind of talking on all the places you can, talking to nouners? Where are you at in the politicking?
I received feedback from a few nouners and iterated from that. And after that, I just uploaded it and said, hey, I'll answer any question that comes by in the jungle anywhere. And I did just that. I'm doing just that. And then when it goes up, I'm planning on putting up a Twitter thread, like explaining my perspective and why I think this can actually work. And it's actually a good idea. And that's pretty much it. Like, at the end of the day, I think the prop speaks for itself. And from this, if it fails, well, I'll learn how can other props affect subsequent props, or how can an attempt from someone else affect new builders or future builders, which is a lot of learning from my side. Like, in my opinion, we can have 100 nouns clothing brands in the future, right? Like, it can grow to that, and hopefully it does. Because clothing, it's $1 trillion industry. It's huge, and I believe there's so much to do. But I think we just haven't had the right persons doing it, if I had to be honest. Because at the end of the day, you can take any great clothing brand and they can do something, let's say Mad Happy, and they can do one thing. But they just did it because of funding. They just did it once because they wanted to get the funding or the money, but they have no incentives to keep that going forward. Let's put up Nouns Brand. Nouns Brand has done an excellent job at designing and creating the lookbooks and the media out of it. But in my opinion, if I would have done something different, I would have prepared like an entire marketing campaign for the products. Like, specific products, create a campaign, videos, shots that make them look good, intriguing, and people want to buy them. Not only nouners, not only Nanish members, right? I believe there's a lot of potential within clothing for nouns to take nounish assets and make them actually pretty appealing for anyone. And focusing on only selling to the nouns ecosystem, it's just a straight up bad idea, in my opinion. So expanding from that, I think it's just, I don't know, it's something interesting to push. And yeah, I think if this props fails, I'll probably still make the website, put up my money up front and just say, hey, let's do pre-orders or something for some assets and see what happens. But yeah, that's pretty much the entire like idea and reasoning behind it.
Awesome. Yeah, we've gone just a little bit past the hour. Index, do you have any closing thoughts or questions or anything else to cover?
Not really, but I feel like maybe we could bring Nekfest back for like a little shorter stint towards the end of the prop or after the prop passes. Because I feel like with the Mucho Love, he's kind of iterated each time, learned a lot throughout like the process. And so I'd be interested to get the take on kind of like the feedback after this prop completes its life cycle.
Yeah, sounds great. 100%. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, if I had to call myself something, I'm truly a Nouns fan, and I'm just trying to do things to provide value. That's about it. It's pretty simple. And I hope as time goes by, like, we can really put up that mentality into other people, like other people's minds. Because at the end of the day, I believe that with collaboration and communication, and even having conversations between us and people in the Nounish ecosystem, we can learn a lot about each other and actually get on the same page with a lot of things, in my opinion. So yeah, it's just everything that I do, it's just I'm trying to do something that can provide value. And if at the end of the day that idea doesn't work out, doesn't pass, or it doesn't receive the funding, well, that's fine. And you just reiterate and try and do something different or do the same thing in another way. I think there's always a lot of opportunities to keep going forward. And I just, if I had to tell any builder something, it's just please don't get dismotivated and leave the Nouns ecosystem, because there's really a lot of things you can do. And if one idea doesn't pass, it doesn't mean your other next ideas won't.
I love that. I really want to thank you for coming on, Nekfis. It's been a pleasure to hear your philosophy. I'm going to be watching this one closely, and yeah, definitely want to have you back. Especially want to definitely have you back when you get your next Mutual Love prop up. I'd love to see how that turns out.
Of course, 100%. And this
Awesome.
one thing, if my birthday is in about a month, so if you want to give me a birthday gift, I would love a medicine lab coat. So a doctor labs coat.
We can maybe work something out for you. Remind us off stream. But yeah, I feel like your approach that you just said, you don't want to rage quit Nouns. There's always more to do. That's kind of like really what we're working on here with our whole infinite game concept. And so I feel like you're becoming, or you already are, but you're an infinite gamer as well.
Yeah, 100%. This is an infinite game, positive sum game. And I believe Nouns will be one of the biggest brands, and easily one of the biggest brands in about 10 to 20 years. No doubt.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Until next time, thanks again for coming on, Nekfis, at Nekfis on Twitter, live with Prop 283, starts on Sunday. Get your wallets ready, and we will see you all next time.